Well, good afternoon, everyone. Greetings and salutations. Greetings and salutations. And a hush fell across the room. Good afternoon, everybody. Good to see you. I hate to interrupt such great conversation. I'm so sorry. Well, it's great to see everybody here today. We've got some pizza today, and I just peeked outside. There's a good amount of pizza. So if people want to go back and have another piece or two, feel free to do that. So I'd like to thank you all for being here today. It's a great showing. I think we just looked and there's about 65 people online as well. You know, I think back, it was maybe, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, we first started doing this. This might be our third year. So at that time, we went through the effort of doing an employee engagement survey. We had this town hall. And the question was, I remember a number of people said, you're going to keep doing this. You can get our feedback next year and meet again. We made a commitment to do that. And so we're here today. And I can say it's been very valuable for us to do these employee engagement surveys and meet with all of you. I'd like to do a few thank yous. First of all, I want to thank Debbie Lambert. She'll be talking. Just let's give her a round of applause. Debbie has really been steadfast in her support, her longitudinal help to us. And I think, Debbie, your presence over the years of doing this has been really very valuable. Also, just want to take a second to thank all of you who have filled out the survey. You know, one thing we think about when you do this several years is, are we going to continue to have a good participation rate? And you'll see it's really good. I'll also say this, we've looked at these comments. We've met as a leadership team and looked at them. I personally looked at them. And they're very valuable. They're very helpful. So I want to let you know the time you spend, the sincerity of the comments, because we read them, are really very valuable to us and directional. So when this survey comes again next year, I would encourage you to do that as well, and do those once again. So I'm going to turn things over to Debbie. I think it's really important for us as a group to come together, to give feedback, to review feedback, and make our plans going forward. So that's our plan today. With no further ado, Debbie.
Okay. Well, thanks everyone. Thanks for being here. And I'm sure a large part of that is the fact that you knew you were having pizza today. Not the fact that I was going to be up here talking to you today. So continue to eat your pizza and also feel free to ask questions as we continue to go along today. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into this. Most of you know me, but for those of you who don't, I'm the Assistant Vice Chancellor of Learning and Development. And I get the great pleasure and opportunity to work with all of your departments, not only in this engagement survey, but I also get the opportunity to work with a lot of you with a variety of programs that we offer on campus, but that we also do with individual departments throughout the university. So thank you so much for all of that. So as Tom said, what I'm going to do today is I'm going to give a high-level overview of the survey results and what that means. This is year 3 that we have done this. And I always, get extreme pleasure out of being able to share this, especially with such a good group. You know, each year these become much more meaningful. People give really great insight into what's going on in each of the departments. We do appreciate that so many people do participate from year to year because that's where the richness of the information comes from. And that's what allows the management and the leadership teams to be able to do things from there. So the first slide is just kind of an overview. I'm not going to go much into this particular slide because everything I'm going to talk about today actually reflects this slide. And, thanks to a lot of hard work from people within the Office of the Vice Chancellor of Research, we're able to have this particular slide. So people like Leah and Natasha, who's outside, and some others helped to put this together. So after we do the survey and we talk about with the leadership team, what are the most important aspects we want to portray to everyone and put out in the newsletter, we put this informational slide together, which highlights the big things that come out of the survey, everything from participation rate to percentages of things that were really important. What are the key strengths that we found for that particular survey? And then lastly, what are still some of the opportunities that we see that we could continue to grow overall within the Office of the Vice Chancellor of Research? And I'm going to go over all of these things as I go through my presentation here with you during this lunchtime. So first off is the response rate, which this year was 62%, which is still a really good showing. Now, it is a bit lower than it was last year, but in the realms of survey rates, anything above a 60%, especially with such a large group, is really huge, right? So, you know, we sent out over 300, we sent out 335 surveys or requests for surveys. That was the number of people we sent this out to, and 236 people responded. Now, responses in regards to what we call the comments, you know, I like to always tell you how many comments we got back, because this is how many things we need to read individually. There were over 700 individual comments that came back on the survey. So not only did people answer all of the questions 1 to 5 and tell us what you thought about that, but there were over 700 individual comments that came back, which is amazing, right? This is what you told us about how you felt about things, whether it was things that you thought needed to be better or things that you really liked. So that means on any given question, there was anywhere from 19 responses on a given question to the maximum amount of responses on any one given question was 194 responses for any one question, which is usually the last 2 open-ended questions, like, please tell us anything else you want us to know that you haven't already had the opportunity to tell us about based on the questions, which is really great. And one thing I always like to say is that all of the responses are always very thoughtful, right? People are very thoughtful in how they respond, including any of the comments that have a tendency to be around things that are more constructive, that people want to tell us about things that they want to see different, whether it's within their own individual area or across OVC as a whole. So again, response rate might have been a little bit lower, but it was still very respectable considering how many people we send this out to. Now, the highlights for the year. Think about this in regards to, this is a 5-point scale. And when we look at a 5-point scale, a 3.0 is average. That's the middle of the road. I'm feeling kind of okay about things. Anything from a 3.5 to a 3.99 means that you're above average. If things range a 4.0 or higher, that's a really high average. Your combined grand mean, meaning when you take all of the responses and you average that all out, was a 4.3, which means that's a really high average. When you get above a 4, in order to continue to stay there and to continue to grow that beyond that, that means you have to have a lot of 4s and 5s being answered in almost all of the questions, right? Think about trying to score that perfect score when you're in school. You have to be getting lots of A's, maybe some B's, but you gotta get lots of A's. So this means that you've got a lot of highly satisfied people in the workplace. Doesn't mean there isn't some work to be done, but there's a lot of really good things going on in every single one of your areas. The percent of questions with a grand mean of 4.0 or higher is 94%. That means out of 16 questions, almost every single question had a grand mean of 4.0 or higher. That's really another amazing feat to have. The combined overall satisfaction rate was 82%. Now, when we talk about overall satisfaction rate, what we're looking at is what percentage of questions did people answer with a 4 or 5. That starts telling us that you start having high satisfaction rates, because 3 is kind of that middle of the road, right? I'm average, I'm lukewarm, I'm feeling good about how things are going. Those 4s and 5s are when you're starting to get into really high satisfaction. And anything above a 75% satisfaction rate is really good. The percent of questions that had an overall satisfaction rate of 75% or higher were 88% of those questions. Again, that's a lot of questions being answered with a 75% satisfaction rate or higher, which means that you're more than above average in those areas. So overall, 14 out of your 16 questions had a 75% or higher. So all of these things are telling me that over the years that we've been doing this survey, things are moving in the right direction. Now, there's going to be some questions and some areas that might have gone down a little bit, some that have gone up. But overall, everything is trending in the right direction, which tells me that between the leadership group and the management groups in each of the areas, you're doing the right things year after year. You're looking at, as Tom said, the leadership team does, they look at all these questions. I meet with them every year to talk about what's new, what might be the same from the previous year, what are similar things that we're hearing, what are new things that might have popped up from the previous year. And they really take this seriously and want to continue to grow and want to continue to make sure they're doing the right things. Now, of the survey questions, the highest scoring question was number 2. My manager or supervisor is open to hearing thoughts, ideas, and concerns of others. That had a grand mean of 4.6 and an overall satisfaction rate of 90%. When we look at questions, there is a hierarchy to the questions. And there are 2 groups of questions. One's around teamwork and one's around is my individual and management concerns being met, meaning, do I hear from my supervisor? Do I get feedback? Am I listened to? Do I feel like I'm being valued? You want those questions to be scoring well, because in those 2 areas is where we ask the most questions. And in those 2 areas is where we keep high engagement and high retention. People have to have a sense of belonging. People need to know they're being heard. They need to understand where their value is. And they need to understand what they're contributing to the organization and to the team and to the department. Those are that intrinsic value that people feel and want to make them stay and want to help them grow in their areas. The lowest scoring question again this year was number 13. Senior leadership provides staff a clear picture of the direction in which the institution is headed. Now, let's take this into relative terms. It's a 3.9 with an overall satisfaction rate of 71%. 3.9 is above average. It's almost at that 4.0. This question has been the lowest rated question for 3 years running. So woohoo, right? It's still a winner, but it's almost at the 4.0, which means, and which I talked to the leadership team about, we have made strides in this area, right? It's about, in the year 1, we talked about the mission, vision, and values that was relooked at, and that was announced. The Gamble Walks, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit, that have been introduced. About senior leadership being more visible. About implementing things in the newsletter that help us connect more. All of these things have been put into place in order for this to move the right direction, right? There's still more work to be done, but a lot of work has already been done. This has moved up considerably over the course of the 3 years, which means your comments have been taken seriously about wanting to feel that connection, wanting to hear from senior leadership. And what was really fun this year was to say, it's been really great to see Dr. Flagg in all these Gamble Walks and stuff, but we want to see more of him. So we're going to clone him. We're going to figure out how does he get cloned, right? So yes, so he was actually called out on wanting to see more of him this year. So I don't know, be careful what you ask for, because you might have to see more of him. Right? But it's always a good thing, right? So, so great work, everyone. So some highlights. The overall grand mean increased by 0.1, and you're saying, well, that's not really huge. But remember what I said? When you're above a 4.0, how hard it is to make that needle move. Now, if you were a 2.0, I would hope it moved like a 1.0 or higher. But in the 4s, when you move by a 0.1, even though that might not sound significant, it is, because it takes a lot of variation for things to move in the right direction in order for that overall grand mean to make that move. The percent of questions with a grand mean of 4.0 or higher increased by 25%. That's a lot of questions that moved up to a 4.0 or higher from last year. That's significant. Overall satisfaction rate increased by 1%. Again, you're saying, well, that's not a huge percentage of increase, but when you're in 75% or higher, and especially when you're at the 80% or higher, that's a lot of an adjustment making a move. And then lastly, the percent of questions with a overall satisfaction rate greater than or equal to 75% increased by 81%. That's a huge move. That's a lot of move in satisfaction rate. And so that's saying that a lot of 4s and 5s are being answered compared to the previous year. So a lot of really good work being done. Areas of strengths. I always like to start with this versus where do we have opportunities to grow. Some of this is really consistent from year to year. First off is pride in work. There is so much pride in what you all do in the research area. Trust within the teams and within coworkers. The flexibility with hybrid work. And a lot of comments were made around the progress with communication, sharing vision, visibility of leadership, and Dr. Flagg. Again, there were still comments made about wanting to see more of senior leadership and having more connections, but the fact that there's been a lot of movement in there was really great. And then areas of opportunity is still more visibility from the executive leadership team at the team and unit level. Loved things like this, like the town halls, some of the social things that happen, but would really like to see more visibility at the team and unit levels, at individual staff meetings or at individual team meetings. Still some clearer communication. And there are comments that are around these type of things that the leadership team is actually looking at. Continue to address trust issues. Trust is a huge thing. When we're working in a hybrid world, when there's new people coming on board, when there's differences in departments and cross-functionally, trust is always one of those things that we all can work on. And it's not that that's a bad thing, but it's a good thing because of the fact that, you know, in the type of world we work in these days, it's definitely something that we always want to continue working in. So before I turn it over to Dr. Flagg to talk about what's been done since our last survey and some of the things that are coming up, I'm going to go ahead and open it up to any questions anybody might have or thoughts that you have in regards to the survey. Because I'm here to answer any questions. Or if the leadership team that's here have any comments that they want to make based off of the conversations we've had thus far.
What I want to emphasize is the anonymity of the survey.
Yes. Okay, so yes, thank you for bringing that up. So, and this comes up every year, and I usually talk to this when I meet with each of the individual teams. And it really actually it's interesting because it started year one, people said, so, because we had info sessions, and it was like, so can you trace back to my IP address? And it's like, absolutely not. And if I had the time to do it, I probably wouldn't do it anyways. However, so yes, and without joking about it, but there is total anonymity to it. So when we do this survey, all of the data comes through myself, and we manage all the data, meaning my team. So when the survey goes out to you, it goes out with an anonymous link. There are no email addresses attached to it. When you reply to it, you could actually forward that link to all of your coworkers and mix it up. You say, okay, we're gonna fake you out. I'm gonna send it to that coworker, and you use that link, and I'll use your link. You could do whatever you want with those, because regardless of where that link comes from, I am never gonna be able to know who did it. All I'm gonna be able to know is what department you were in. All I know is 60 of these went to this group, and hopefully 60 come back from that group. Hopefully you know which group you belong to. Sometimes we get sometimes it's like, oh, we sent out 60 and 75 came back. It's like, Amy, how did that happen? You told me you only had this many people in that group, and we got a few more back in that particular group. So every once in a while we have those little anomalies, and there's human error that happens there, but it is anonymous. There is no way. The other thing that I am very careful about doing is when I read through all those comments, remember I said there were over 700 comments that came back? Those are all dumped into one Excel spreadsheet. I read through them before they get dumped into any singular report. And the reason I do that, and it probably takes me almost a week to read through all of those comments, I highlight anything that I believe once it gets put into a report that might be either sensitive, that could potentially be traced back to someone only because of the type of writing or how it might come across, as far as that if they're referring to someone as a male or female supervisor and not knowing how large or small the particular group is, I then might take the gender away. I might say, they, them, their type of thing, so that it's not, she said this or he said that or that happened. So that when the managers read that, that is taken out of that so that it stays as neutral as it absolutely can. If I still find it to be overly sensitive, I might even redact or rewrite that, still keeping the essence of what that comment was. And then letting the manager know, I highlight it and let the manager or the leadership team know that that was overly sensitive. And that was rewritten for that reason so that that could stay as anonymous as absolutely possible. And please do not share that information with anyone because we want people to feel free to put in any comments that they have. So please be assured, however you answer that, that stays as anonymous as absolutely possible. There are no names attached to it. There is absolutely no way we could trace it back to an IP address. If there was any way to do that, that somebody's got to be a whole lot smarter than me. So there is absolutely no way for us to do that. And we do that for a reason, because we want you all to feel absolutely as comfortable as you possibly can that the leadership team, and even if they'd asked me to, even if there was no way, I would never do that. So, and I will tell you, to date, after 3 years of this, not anybody on the leadership team has ever asked me to try to figure out who that was, nor have they ever tried to. So kudos to everybody on the team for that as well, because that's the only way you can make this work. So thank you for asking that question. And I know that was long-winded, but I'm very passionate about that as well. So even though I'm not a researcher by heart, but I am to a degree. So Tom, I'll turn it over to you. I'm going to move out of your way.
I bet you there's more pizza out there as well. People are one time we ran out. We don't want to do that again. Debbie, thanks for making that point. I myself was filling out a survey the other day. It wasn't this one, it was something else. I wanted to give some constructive feedback and I paused and I said, I wonder if I can do this in a safe manner. So you gave an extensive answer, but I think we won't give constructive feedback when you can and when you want to. So I think that's the main point. Well, let's see, is this the clicker? Oh yeah, there's the clicker. I'm going the wrong direction though. Okay, well, it's great to see all of you again. It's a really good showing. And again, there's a lot of people online. I can't see exactly, but a good number. So a few things of what's been done in 2023. So we took the feedback from last year. We started some projects and a lot of these are ongoing. As Debbie has mentioned, I think hopefully a lot of you have seen, we got the feedback last year about more exposure, more sort of lateral connection points from leadership team to the folks doing the day-to-day works. We've done 25 Gemba walks. They've been a lot of fun. So thank you for inviting me and truly other members of the leadership team. This is not about one individual. It's about the idea of saying our organization's really valuing the idea of having the leadership team connect with the entire team in different ways. We've been working on a variety of improvement projects as well. I think the next point is about equipment. One of the piece of feedback we received is that people had aging equipment, and did we have a system by which we could say your laptop is this many years old, we should move it along and so forth. So I believe Betsy and her team has been working on that and a consolidated way of tracking that. So our team has the best equipment available. We've got ongoing strategic planning. So one of the ways we respond was that last year and even this year is by having a very dedicated strategic deployment plan. It's a significant process. We've dedicated many hours to that and we'll continue to do that. So as we think about our mission and our vision, which we established, I think the first year we did this, and how we realize that in the work we're doing, we are actively working on that. And I think we'll have more this year. Branding identity. So I know a number of people in the room have worked really hard on this idea of branding identity. And I think I've gotten different feedback. Some people have said, it's great. I really appreciate it. Some people said, what role does this play in the way I think about myself? I've gotten both things. I think the identity is really important for us. Look at our group. There's about 300 of us, 350 of us in our group. Think about the pride we take in the work we do, how we impact the researchers. I would say, as someone who's done a decent amount of research, and there's a few of us in the room, before I was in the OVCR office, I didn't understand the office exactly, and I was pretty tuned in. So I think as we say, we are a group of research professionals here to support you. We think about our mission and vision. If we identify ourselves as a cohesive group through that branding effort, that is going to help us on campus. People know who we are. that we're a collective group. So I appreciate the efforts that have been done in that. And I think it's really important as we project ourselves to campus. So I want to make sure I thank everybody for the work they've done in that area. You know, community events are fun. I don't know if I'm doing something wrong here. Community events are fun. We've done a number of these this year. We did the open house. That was really a lot of fun. Ice cream social. That's always a popular event. We're doing this town hall now. We've got the volleyball tournament. Raise your hand if you're going to be in the volleyball tournament. Raise your hand if you're going to win the volleyball tournament. Look at a few hands went higher. I saw that. I must say, you know, right now, again, we're going to ask for questions. I hope we get some questions. Somebody's just kind of a quieter group, but when it comes to volleyball, things get excited. I don't, we're looking forward to that. We did some coffee cart things in the kind of cooler months. We'll likely do that as well. Let us know. We think these are nice ways to have some touch points with the team. We pretty intentionally want to get different members of different teams, if you will, and divisions interacting. So it's a pretty thoughtful approach. But honestly, it's all for you. So give us your feedback and let us know what you think. Is projecting okay there? Oh, did it go out of the mode? Oh, the gimbal walk pictures. Oh, the gimbal walk pictures. Wow. There are some great, that's okay. There are some great pictures, mostly of me wearing hairnets in different settings, which is a lot of fun. Well, okay, I'll just talk about the Gemba Walks for a second. The Gemba Walks are a lot of fun. So first of all, I just want to say thank you for inviting me and the other members of the leadership team. So again, the idea is we want multiple people from our team into your workspace. Honestly, that's the space that you occupy every day. I think we got some very heartening comments. I think a number of people said, you know, I'm really surprised in a very positive way that you're down here. And I said, this is really exciting. I've been here for 20 some years and I've never understood this part of the operation very well. And it's great to see you do it. I think sometimes people did maybe more of a presentation approach. That was fine, maybe more formal. I remember a few people said to us, I'm just going to do what I do every day. And I said, that is great. What are you going to do? I'm just going to stand here and sort of take it in with everybody else. So those were really positive. Thank you for inviting us in. I think we're going to try to fit in even more next year. There were one or two of those Gemba walks in which the team would spontaneously say something along the lines of, you know, I do this process and I've, you know, I'll say, how long have you been doing that? What have you changed over time? Just some kind of interesting questions. And I'll say, we always have trouble in this spot or this area. And what I said to a number of people, I said, you understand that process better than anybody else on campus. You do it every day. This is your job. You're the best situated person to think about how to make this work better. And imagine this process that you're in charge of is being used by researchers, all of our different researchers. You know, maybe as we do more and more of these, more of those spontaneous things will emerge. Or maybe I think a couple of those teams said, we're going to work on this. We're going to try these things this year. Maybe work with Leah. When you come back next year, we could see how those things are changing. So some of that might spontaneously occur as well. So the pictures of me dressed up in your great stuff, we'll send those around later, and that's just fine. I'll say this part too. So one of the parts that was important to us was training. I think the feedback the first year was around managers interaction. You know, I think a lot of us that have been involved in management, it's tricky. And I think a lot of people haven't had direct training in management necessarily when they're thrust into those positions. So with the help of our HR team, we've been able to have a manager certification program, which is highly popular. I think I was curious the first year how many people would sign up. I think we actually had to have like a gated process because so many people were interested in that. And that's continued. There are 23 participants that completed the program this year. And I think that's just fantastic. I'd like to thank the unit leaders that supported this and identified folks and those that participated in it. I'm not going to read these quotes for you. I've left it up there for a little bit, but I want you to look over that. I went to, I think, you know, the graduation ceremony, if you will, at the end of it. And the introspection, I think the understanding of roles and their own process in that role was really great for me to see as people reflected on the experience. So I think we're planning to do that again this year. And so think about it. For those that haven't been through the process and it may be appropriate, talk to your unit leader and think about that. Okay, so again, we're going to wrap things up in a second and ask for questions. And again, I think there's more pizza outside for those that want it. We didn't run out this year, so that's good. And I just want to do a couple of thank yous before I forget as well. I want to thank Debbie, and Leah, Matt, Natasha, Michelle, and everybody else that helped to put this together. These things always look easy, but they take a lot of time. So what's next? I want to emphasize we've got this strategic deployment that's underway. We're thinking about that. We're planning for that. We should have more to present to you to chew on in the near term. That's a very active area. We've got the manager training, as I mentioned as well. We're thinking about the area of professional development. I think that ties into some of the things we're seeing here. Everybody in the leadership group, myself included, think that's a really important thing. So we're going to give some more formal thinking to that area, how to elevate that, provide opportunities and structure. And then individual departments. I stand up here and do the little presentation, but honestly, the work really happens at the unit level. I think in some ways my role is to sort of bring all the different units together in a very productive, collaborative way, which is happening already. But a lot of this is going to happen in your units, and you'll see that. The last thing is year number 4 will be in April, so we'll send these out again. And as Debbie mentioned, our participation rate was maybe down just a little bit, still pretty good, but we really appreciate your presentation, your participation. And we'll say this too, I want to be very clear, because I myself was filling out a survey recently and paused. These are anonymous. You can leave us constructive feedback and feel comfortable in that. So with that, I will take a break. I will open this up to questions. I would love questions, including those that are online if I can see them. I'm not sure I can. But this is the interactive part of today's program. So if you have any questions at all, let us know. There might be some online too. Look at this
Yep,
works.
I'm going to see if I can see. Nope, I don't see any online.
No questions.
And we do have
no
74
questions.
people on, but I don't see it.
We should ask questions during volleyball when everybody's sort of engaged. We could say, we could right on that. Questions. Ooh, a question. Look at that. I'm gonna have to actually take a mic up to. I think that'd work best, wouldn't it, Debbie? If we do
Yep.
that? Bill Donahue. That's a flashback, huh?
Doing just fine. Nice to see you again. Hi, guys. I'm Marjorie McIntyre. I work with the clinical research support team. I understand you guys are thinking about some more executive leadership opportunities to be more engaged with the day-to-day of our teams. We personally really enjoyed the Gemba walks. Do you have any preliminary thoughts about what you might want to engage with in the next year?
Thank you, Marjorie. It's good to see you. We got to talk earlier today. It's interesting. So we, sit and actually look at all this information. Oh, thanks, Laurie. And I think we feel really positive about the Gemba walks. They're good. We did about 24. We can try to fit more of those in. But I would love suggestions on other ways to do that. And Leah may want to speak to this as well. There's a certain history planning. There's a certain logic behind the Gemba walk, right? The idea to kind of show up with curiosity, humility, and experience someone else's workspace. There are other ways we could potentially interact those. So if you have suggestions on that part, as Debbie pointed out, that has been the lowest question for 3 years. So we've got consistency is a good thing for our group. It's gotten better. We've actually debated, what does senior leadership mean? Does it mean unit leadership? Does it mean OVCR leadership? Does it mean campus leadership? What part of that actually fits? We've had, a little bit of a debate about that. But Margie, if you have suggestions or comments, let us know. Yeah.
I have a quick
Fantastic.
question. You kind of touched on it a little bit, but one question we do have is what you just said of defining senior leadership. Because I think that could be different in so many different roles of what you're in, especially in our workplace. Defining senior leadership. I mean, it could be a supervisor or a manager or it could be you. I think that question can be a little more defined, and maybe we can see if we really need to work on it a little more.
Yeah, thanks for your comment. Appreciate that. It could mean a lot of different things, and we've debated that. Debbie, I think those questions are somewhat locked in, right? Yeah, so we've some limitations on changing them to specify.
Yeah, they are. And one of the things we can do, and it's really interesting, because if you go to the philosophy of Gallup, some of those are worded in the way that they are for a reason. But what we could do is within that question is define it, what we mean by senior leadership in that question itself. So put a parentheses around it to say what we mean by senior leadership for that particular question. So maybe as a leadership team, we could say, here's what we want people thinking that is. and for next year so that there's a clearer understanding without changing the question itself. Just to, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good comment. And honestly, of all the things we've talked about as we reflected on this, is what does that mean exactly? And I think our conclusion was we'd leave a lot of time in the town hall so people could share with us what they thought that meant when they filled it out. But I think when it gets, in the broadest sense, it means we want to be connected to the vision, the strategy, how this impacts the research community, where we're going to be in a year, what's that plan, and how does it connect to what I do on a daily basis? As I've thought about it, that's the way I put it together. But I think all of us have done that. But additional thoughts, and particularly how to be connected, is good. Yeah, they're burning questions there. See some smiles, but no more
I know,
questions.
and no
Not
questions
smiles. I
online
appreciate the
either. I know,
smiles,
lots
by
of,
the way.
lots of smiles. It's because they all have pizza. They're all full of pizza now. That's why there's smiles.
Okay, going once. Oh, John Heldens. Here, let's get you a mic so they can hear you online. Yes. Oh, Lori's behind you. She's faster than I am. Okay.
So since we're all together, taking a
Yep.
vision.
Is it on?
Since we're all together.
That should be green.
Since we're all together in mission and vision, we have a new dean that most of us don't get to interact with. Is there anything you can share about changes where we're headed?
Thank you for the question. I appreciate that. Yeah, so we do have a new dean on campus, and I've had a good opportunity to interact with Dean Sampson several times. I think he's going to be great for our institution. He comes from a pretty strong research background, both in terms of doing laboratory and translational research. So he's held a large number of grants. I think one of the things in conversations has been thinking about metrics and some of the things it fits in a lot with the continuous improvement things that we're doing. But I think in a lot of ways, he has heard positive feedback, as I interpret it, from the work that we do. And I think that's a really encouraging thing. I have found really great engagement from him, a process around that, thinking about a process improvement framework, I would say, in terms of KPIs and deliverables and metrics. And I think an appreciation for what we're doing. But he understands the work we do on multiple different levels, which is really encouraging. Yeah, I've been positive about our previous leadership, and I've been very positive about the leadership that he's showing so far. And there's a vision. I think one of the things you hear is, how do we move our institution in terms of our impact? What does impact mean for us? We're improving human health. We're going to move that to the next level of impact. And there's a vision there and an energy, which is really exciting for me. Thanks for that question. Oh, great. Sure, wear my running shoes. I took the Hokas off today. So yes.
So much. Thank you for bringing up metrics in relation to research. Can you share a little bit about the metrics that senior leadership is looking at now as part of your strategic planning efforts?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I'm going to take that to mean our senior leadership, all these senior leadership things. Well, I think we're defining that right now, right? Picking the right metrics is really important. And I think we're in the process of doing that. I don't quite know we've got the final ones figured out, but as part of that strategic deployment, we will think about those and determine those. There's, yeah, so I don't know if I can announce those quite yet, but part of that strategic deployment, you should see specific metrics of the work we're doing and how we can track that over time. But I would say, having been through these things a couple of times, picking the right metrics that have the right elements is really important. Yeah, I don't know if you want to talk about metrics at all or KPIs. Yeah, I think So as Leah just mentioned, staff retention is one that we thought of. You know, how do you look at employee satisfaction? Is it retention? Is it scores on surveys and things like that? So I think one in the employee realm is really important. We'll probably settle on that particular one. Good question. Anything else? Right here, Garrett.
Tim asked about the mission and vision as well with around the senior leadership. So I told him we're gonna add that to the list.
All right, I'm gonna let you go next. We're gonna read this part. Thank you.
Okay, so I was just curious, you know, Anschutz is growing, our research volume is growing. We seem to be on a very specific trajectory. And I was just curious if you have the capabilities to share kind of who we see as our current competition, if you will, and who you see as the next man up that we're going after.
It's that volleyball competitive spirit coming through now. I knew it was in there somewhere. You know, I think it's an important question. I don't, there's different ways you can make these lists and look at them, right? You know, for example, US News and World Report has changed some of their methodology. Some people would look just straight at research funding and so forth. I mean, to put ourselves in a position to be a top 10 academic medical research field, public research entity, I think would be a goal that some people are talking about. But I would think of it in those terms. You could look at this in terms of public institutions as we are, or private institutions. You could look across that and so forth. So again, I appreciate the question. I would think of us in terms of a public academic medical center. What our competition is in that realm. And I think, for example, being the top 10 of that group, of which we're getting close, is really impressive. As you look at that trajectory, which is, you know, grants and contracts, one of the key metrics which might fit in this is research funding. We've done this. The interesting part is what are the other institutions in the country done? They've done this, the ones that are in the same realm. So we not only have to show improvement over time, we actually have to, it's the velocity of that improvement. So we've done very well. Again, all the people in this room and listening online have contributed to that. But many other places in the country are doing that same sort of thing. Good question.
Okay.
Anything else?
We do
Was
have
there
one,
online?
yep, we do have one online from Tim in CCTSI. The one question about, he said, the one question about the mission and vision of the institution is clear to me. This always scores low. Is there confusion around whose mission? OVCR, university, our own units? Is there a way to clarify the question a bit more for folks next year? Which unit are we talking about?
So Tim, thanks for that question online. I think that does fit into some we're talking about here, though. Is it at the unit level, at the OVCR level, the campus level? And that is what we've, I think, struggled with a little bit too. I don't know if we've quite resolved that. It may be that we could ask the question differently. The fact that it's been a persistent finding in our survey shows the consistency, but also that there's something there. So I agree with you, and I think we could try to further clarify that to the extent we're able to on the survey. Unit level, overall OVCR, or at a higher level.
Yep.
So this is more questions, I think, than the last 3 years combined, which is.
I think you're right.
Any more
We
questions?
must be doing something right after all these years.
If you just wait long enough, people get uncomfortable. Last call for questions. Okay, well, as we wrap things up, I'd just like to say that as you think about that mission and vision, it's only possible because of all the work that the group does here. As somebody that's been the research side of this equation and when worked with all these different offices over my career, I can tell you that people are very appreciative of the work you do. Now, they may not recognize on a daily level, a daily basis, but when they're doing their work, everything's going forward because of what you do. They know that you're there in the background. Some of the things we're doing is to try to give you that identity on campus, this OVCR office. But I wanted to express, on behalf of the research community, my thanks for all that you're doing. And with that, there's a mad dash for the remaining pizza. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.